All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Small Business Development Workshop, Sustainable Time Management, How to Hold Boundaries Effectively to Increase Your Time, Impact, and Fulfillment in Your Life. The Duluth Chamber is grateful to provide this offering free of charge to our members because of the generosity of our sponsor, Lake Superior College. At this time, I have the pleasure of introducing you to our speakers for today, Elsie Storm and Jonny Roman, owners of Turning Life Gold and married couple. Elsie and Jonny are professional life and business coaches. Both individually and as a team, Elsie and Jonny help people from all walks of life break through their fears and connect with new possibilities for their careers, businesses, relationships, and lives. As a reminder, this is intended to be a conversational session. Please feel free to ask questions either on audio or in the chat. There will also be time for questions at the end. And if you could come off video, that would be great. So Elsie and Jonny, thank you for joining us today to share how we can all do a better job of thoughtfully managing our time. Take it away.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone.
Awesome.
Nice to be here with you.
Yeah, really great to be here with you. And as Aubrey was sharing, we would love to see your faces if you're able to come off video. We just find that, we want to create a community here, a sense of like we're all here together. So if you do have the possibility of coming off camera, we'd love to see your faces.
We would. All right.
Yeah. So welcome, everyone.
So just a little bit more about us. So we are life and business coaches. We do a lot of leadership work. And we work with people on this topic of time management all the time. And so we thought this would be a great thing to bring to our community here. And we're also like deep in, like just transparency, we're deep in needing to practice every single one of these things that we're teaching you. We have a 2.5-year-old and a 4-month-old baby. And so we're trying to navigate running our businesses, with being parents to 2 young kids, to taking care of ourselves, to holding boundaries, to all of these things. So we're full on in this with you, and we'll be sharing some very real life examples as we go along today. As Jonny said, we plan for this to be really interactive. We want you to participate. We'll be sharing, typing in the chat, things like that, ask questions. And we don't want to just be talking at you for the next hour, because that's not really fun for everyone. So we'll have lots of hopefully good participation from you all. All right. So with that, we want to start with a question. And the question is for each one of you, in a word or a sentence, what is one thing that you struggle with in time management? Do you want to talk about how we'll do this? I guess if their video's on, they can share, and if not, they can put it in the chat.
Yeah. So what we'd like to do is just get a sense for, hear from you so that you can bring your presence into the room with us. So just very briefly, one word, one sentence, when you think about time management and the struggle that you have, just share that briefly, say your first name and then your word or your sentence, and I'll just call you out. And if you're able to come off mute and do it, great. And if for some reason you're not, then we'll just move on to the next, and I'm going to call your name as I see you on my screen.
Okay.
So let's start with Naomi.
Hi. Probably arriving at events on time.
Awesome. Thank you. Kate, nice to see you.
Hello, friends. What is my struggle? I probably not leaving enough time between things sometimes, and also spreading myself too thin. So putting too much on the calendar and not seeking the support I need to actually do those things well.
Yeah, very common. Sherry, I saw some head nodding going on there.
I can agree with everything. For me, it's also interruptions. So whether that's feeling the need to check email, or somebody chatting, or a phone call when I'm in the middle of something else.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to talk about some of that today. Tad, I saw you post. Are you able to come off mute and just share, or should I read it?
I think though. You can hear me?
Dad.
Hi. I always have trouble accepting that time is real and it always moves forward, and then being realistic about all that stuff because day gets away from you, or like a whole month, like October, for example. Bye.
Yes, as it does.
Right.
Yeah. Madeline.
Hi. Yeah, I was gonna say overcommitment and spreading myself too thin and maybe creating some boundaries.
Boundaries.
It's good
Yep.
you're here. We're gonna dig deep into that today.
Yes, we are. Bud.
Hi, good morning. I would say that I need to avoid the shiny objects.
Shiny object syndrome, my favorite. Cassidy.
I would say that just being able to say yes to things. I like being able to say yes to things. So then I kind of end up with a lot of things going on, and I need to learn how to kind of know when it's okay to say no to things.
Great.
We'll dig deep into that today.
Definitely.
Perfect.
Jill Hinners.
Good morning, everyone. I've always been an everything feels important person. So I think the prioritizing and, I can always figure out some compelling reason behind whatever I'm saying yes to, that it's important for me to take time for this because X.
Yep.
Yeah.
For nearly everything.
Okay. This is, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
I'm glad all of you are here.
Absolutely.
In the chat, we also have Patty, who said how to logically organize electronic files for easy retrieval. Erica said deciding how to prioritize important tasks. Kate added multitasking can be great, but also not healthy and productive sometimes. Totally. We have prioritizing projects and tasks, prioritizing, also realizing that not everything has to happen right away. Analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Totally. And if anyone else wants to drop those in, we'd love to hear from you. But this is great. And I think we can at least all relate to so much of what everyone shared here. This is really a common thing. So
yeah. And it's great. We're going to cover a lot of this today. So so we want to take a look, like kind of a different look at what is a really common idea, this thing called time management. It's nothing new. There are a million different systems and tools out there that you can use to support yourself in managing time successfully, organizing your to-dos, etc. There's all these fancy calendars and planners and bullet journals and index card systems, techniques. There's definitely an app for that. I have many of them. So, there's so many different ways to manage this resource that we all have equal access to. And yet some people seem to be just more productive and they seem to accomplish more. Like from the outside, there's this impression that somehow they are the lucky ones that were somehow imbued with an extra 5 hours in every single day. And we have no idea how they got those extra 5 hours. But I don't have access to that. So, how else does someone like Elon Musk or, Bill Gates or whoever run so many companies at the same time, or like Bob in accounting? How is he so productive? I don't understand. I see you, Bob. We all know a Bob in accounting in our life in some way. So there's something that we've learned in exploring this topic, which is that the system that you use is perfect for the results that you're getting. The system that you're currently using is designed to create the results that it helps you to create. So if you're overwhelmed and stressed and stretched with barely time to eat, there's a system that you're using that's supporting you in creating that. And if you're in flow and productive on task and on top of everything with, gas left in the tank for you and your family, there's also a system that you're using that supports you in creating those results. And so today we want to slow down and take a look at the systems that many of us are currently using. And this is less about external tools. It's less about planners and calendars and to-do lists and things like that. And this is more about what we would refer to as like our internal operating system, and start thinking about, this idea that if we don't like the results that we're getting, if we are overwhelmed, if our calendar is so full, then perhaps it's time to upgrade our systems. And so what we want to do is start slowing down and asking, like, how am I contributing to the overwhelm that I'm experiencing? How do I create, promote, or allow a full calendar with double and triple bookings and no time to eat, nothing left for my family? And this is not from like a blame game place or anything like that. It's really about reconnecting to your own ability to create a different reality for yourself when it comes to your time. So some examples of common systems that many of us use that tend to produce poor time management results. So, and we've heard some of these today in your intros, saying yes when your time tolerance is really a no. You don't really have the time, but you still find yourself saying yes. That is a system that is designed to lead to overwhelm. Believing and operating as if everything is urgent and placing it, all in the urgent or important box. We heard that also, like everything's important, everything is urgent. And therefore, like, what truly is important and urgent? Procrastinating and having large chunks of time and saying, oh, this isn't due yet. And then the night before or whatever, rushing through your tasks and projects at the end, et cetera, and rushing through meetings and all that.
Do we have any procrastinators here? If you're a procrastinator, just raise your hand.
Yeah.
Yep.
There we
Okay.
go.
Yep,
Thank you for thank you for your honesty,
Yeah.
Kate and Naomi.
Yeah, go ahead. And you can also raise your virtual hand if you're not on video.
Totally.
But yeah.
I know I'm guilty of that as well. So again, this is not about any like bad, blame, anything like that. It's just looking at, okay, what are the systems that we're currently employing? And we found that the solution is not getting a better planner or getting a better tool or an app. And again, don't get me wrong. We love tools. We love apps. I use plenty of them. I live by my calendar. We're even going to teach a very simple, practical tool towards the end of our time today that you can implement. But the real solution that we've found creates the biggest change is starting to look at, like, what am I committing myself to doing, and where can some things, for example, be set aside so that I'm not creating a situation where I have more things on my to-do list than I have time to do. And this is about taking accountability for, getting off of autopilot. We all have autopilot mode where we just default to how we, typically show up in relation to tasks and time and things like that, and becoming more intentional, looking at the choices that we're making, the choices that can contribute to effectively managing our time, or contribute to overwhelm and stress and exhaustion and things like that. So that's sort of the essence of where we're coming from. And this is a topic we could easily spend hours on. So given we only have this hour with you, we're going to kind of introduce 3 of the most common causes that we've found of poor time management, and dive into this a little bit and open it up, so that we can start to get a sense for what we're talking about.
So the three main causes that we are determining, and this is based off of our own life, our work with a lot of different clients, and is the 3 things is: you're not holding boundaries effectively, priority management or lack of priority management, and people rushing instead of slowing down. And so we're going to dig into each one of those today. And my hope is that even if you take away 1 or 2 different insights or ideas that you can start implementing, it's going to be a win, right? So maybe you can't do it all, but just be like, I'm going to really take this thing or these 2 things and implement them after our call today. So let's talk about holding boundaries. And what do we mean by boundaries essentially in ways that it relates to time? So it means like getting clear on our limits of our availability, our time, our energy, our resources, and then holding to those limits. So one of the biggest sources of overwhelm, like if we're overwhelmed, it's because somewhere we've gotten sloppy with our boundaries. So a raise of hands, either your hand on video or a virtual hand, how many of you experience some type of stress or overwhelm throughout a given day? Where it's just like you're feeling like I'm overwhelmed, or you hear yourself saying out loud, oh, I'm so stressed.
We got some double hands.
Yeah, right. And what are some things that you're feeling stressed about? Just put it in the chat. Just throw some things into the chat. What are you feeling stressed about? So while you guys are putting in their example is right now, you know, we're transitioning to this family of 4. We have a 4-month-old baby. We're learning how to navigate our business with the baby, her naps, time,
Our
parents,
calendars.
daycare, all of it.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, that on some level, that's stressful for us. We're getting better, but there's days where it feels really stressful. Throw in the chat. Let's see. So we have a lot to do with an upcoming big event and stressing that I'm forgetting something. Okay. What else? What else do you guys experience stress? Everyone needs something from me. Yeah. One way I alleviate stress through the day is tell myself I can do this after hours, but then my after hours become stressful. Yes. Right. Scheduling a perfect day at work and it never works out. Customer needs something, staff person with questions, stress at night or right before deadlines, stressing about getting things done before deadlines. Kate Lundquist, yeah, I'm curious. You just finished a whole bunch of things with the election. I'm guessing there was a lot of stress, perhaps, or overwhelm leading up to that. Yeah, I hate saying no, too many yeses. So there's a lot of different things, right? We could spend a ton of time on this, but yeah, there's a lot of ways that we can experience stress or overwhelm in our lives. So what does it mean really to get sloppy with our boundaries? Essentially, it means that we're not keeping our word to ourselves and we're giving our word to everyone else except to us. Because it's really easy to keep a meeting on a calendar that we have with somebody else. But it can be hard if we schedule something for ourselves to keep that meeting with ourselves. And even some of you put that in some or different words in the chat. So for example, let's say on your calendar, you have an hour set aside to work on a project at work that's due in a few days. And as you're sitting down to start working on that project, someone comes in and says, hey, can I just have 15 minutes of your time? I just want to meet with you really quick. But what happens when someone asks for 15 minutes of your time? It's rarely only 15 minutes, right? And all of a sudden that meeting just took 45 minutes and you have 15 minutes left to work on that project. And it's really not even worth it. So you're just going to spend time doing emails, and that hour that you were supposed to work on the project is now gone. Okay. So that's one example of how that just happens, right? Another one on a personal note is like, for me, having time to exercise. And that's the first thing that oftentimes gets cut, even though when I exercise, I experience way less stress in my life. I'm a happier mama. I'm a happier wife. Everyone is better because I exercise really for my mental health. But it's the first thing that gets cut when things are like too busy with the family or the kids need me too much. So that's something I'm working on, where I'm sloppy with my boundaries. Another thing is, maybe you're not even putting time on your calendar to work on projects, and you're just like shooting from the hip and not even prioritizing your day or planning things out. Another way we get sloppy with our boundaries, and I see this happening a lot with clients, is how many of you are answering emails or texts or calls at dinner time when you're home with your family and saying, my family is my top priority, but then you're responding to an email because the email feels urgent. Likely there's almost never an email that's actually an emergency, but we feel like we need to respond to it immediately instead of holding these boundaries. So it's a big thing at our family. It's like, no, we don't respond to emails, phones be put away, etc. because that's a big like value specifically for me. So all of this is, well, hold on. If we go back to the email thing for a minute, part of that too is we're sloppy with our boundaries. Many people aren't even communicating to the people they work with. Hey, I'm not going to respond from the time of like 5 to 8 or 4 to 9 or whatever when I'm home with my kids. I'm completely offline. And if you need something, I will respond once my kids are in bed. Or for me, I say, I tell my clients, you can contact me. I will get back to you within 24 hours. And I don't respond on weekends unless it's an absolute emergency. And I tell that to everyone I work with right up front. So there's a really clear communication. And then I really hold to that boundary. So nothing is like, I have to get back to them immediately. I have a clear agreement. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. But if that's not even communicated, then we feel the inner stress and pressure to, I need to get back to this person right away. Right. So that's where we can get sloppy. So where's an example of maybe where you feel sloppy with your boundaries, where you're letting other people like come in and prioritize what you want? And I'd love to hear from you if you want to raise your hand and unmute yourself. I'd love to hear, where are you sloppy with your boundaries? Because I bet if you're sloppy, many of us can experience the same thing. Anyone?
I've seen some head nods and
I'll help you out here. I'll dive into that.
Great.
I noticed a great chamber meeting person here. Patty mentioned when technology doesn't work. Well, I'm usually the tech guy within the company, even though I'm not a tech person, which can sound like an emergency at like a family dinner type of time. So holding those boundaries can be making somebody else's emergency my problem is an area where I could use some help.
That's a really good one. So I'm curious, like, how often is it a true emergency?
I don't know. I don't deal with saving lives, so probably.
Yeah. And how often, like, do you communicate with people in this example that I was sharing of, hey, this is like time that I have blocked for dinner, etc.?
I really love the example that you've set, being upfront with folks right away in the communication line. I don't have that in place, and I think I've already got one now.
All right, awesome, good. Try it on, see what happens.
And in a little bit, we're going to talk about and offer some examples of like how you can say no in a graceful and professional way, or how you can create an agreement or a boundary, like what we're talking about with you, Bud, about getting the message out so there's real clarity around there.
Yep. Let's take one more share where someone is, where you feel sloppy with your boundaries. You could also put it in the chat, but we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
I'll say something.
All right.
Because I'm a real estate broker and I manage rental properties. So a lot of it becomes pretty sloppy with technology because everyone thinks that their thing is so important. And it's like, I can text you or message you or do like every single thing. Well, I'm not going to have every single thing open all the time so that I can respond to your thing immediately. So anything within like an hour for me that's an emergency is pretty good because, I can have emergencies. There's definitely house emergencies.
Yep. I have a client that does a lot of real estate work in that way, and we've been working a lot on having her hold boundaries around that, because it can just be like so overwhelming. She'll be on vacation and just on her phone the whole time, instead of like, how do I really, is this truly an emergency or not? It can be overwhelming. Right. Thanks for sharing.
And it can be tricky, right? Because we want to honor and protect relationships and things like that. And so, you know, that's running in the background, this desire to do that. And so the question becomes then, how do we protect the relationship and protect our time and our boundaries?
Yeah.
And have both. What we're saying is that those are not mutually exclusive. One does not require that the other gets tossed to the side, and that we can create and hold both as true for us.
Yeah. And really all of this to say is that there's a cost to this, right? It's like when we don't hold boundaries, when we say yes to things more than we should, we're essentially wasting our time in some ways, and we'll look at that in a minute. Relationships, quality of work, etc. So part of the reason that we get sloppy with our boundaries is because we move into people pleasing, right? We collapse into people pleasing, which is essentially like the inability to say no at times. And you know, many of us can have this like nice, giving, very friendly personality that gets in the way of at times be effective with work, not being able to practice like how to say no in a graceful and professional way, not letting people know that we've already committed to something else. We were coaching a company here in Duluth a few months ago, and we're working with their supervisory team, and someone asked a question and we all laughed, but it was a very real question. And she said, well, how do I do this with Minnesota Nice? And we were like, yeah, that's a great question, because the Minnesota Nice thing, while it's this kind of funny cultural piece, there really is a deeper underlying thing here of wanting to say yes and wanting to be kind and not be, you know, super direct and things like that. We're getting some good comments here around, yeah, huge people pleaser. FOMO, yes, Kate. Yeah, Tad, managing expectations of others. Absolutely. So why do we people please? Well, we don't want to disappoint other people. We don't want to feel guilty by saying no. Oftentimes we don't have the language to let someone down with like grace and professionalism. There's fear of conflict. Oh, are they going to be mad at me? I just want to keep the peace, so I'm just going to say yes. We want people to like us, right? And we feel uncomfortable if they don't. And we aren't managing our priorities. And so in many ways, time management is really a boldness issue. It's being bold. It's deciding to care more about what's important to you than whether or not someone likes if you say no or not. So in a minute, we're going to share 4 examples of how to say no with both kindness and professionalism. And you guys can screenshot those so you have some wording, because oftentimes I think people just need a little wording sometimes for how to say that. But
can I share?
Yeah.
There's a metaphor that I really like that helps me think about this in a way. So let's say, you know, you have a plane to catch, and you're like, the plane is going to leave whether you're on it or not. And you've bought the tickets and you have everything planned and you're about to leave out the door to go to the airport, and someone walks in and says, hey, can I have 15 or 20 minutes of your time? I need to have a conversation. How do you respond in that case? Typically you're like, you know what, I really hear you, and you know, I've got a plane to catch and I'm just about to walk out the door. Most of us have no problem saying that when there's that context, when there's a really clear boundary that it's like, oh, everybody understands that, so I'm going to be okay saying no because I've got to head to the airport. And what we're offering is that context, you can hold the importance of that context for your own time, for your own projects, etc. when someone walks in and tries to derail you from your priorities and what you have set aside this time with or for. So it could be like the same way that it feels so natural inside to say, you know what, I would love to spend time with you and I have to go catch a flight, to say, you know what, I would love to give you 15 minutes right now, and I'm committed right now to this block of time. Can we schedule some time very soon to have this conversation.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I love that. So let's pause for a minute. We want to hear from you guys in the chat. Write in one thing. What is something interesting or valuable that you've thought, heard, or said so far? I'll repeat that. Put in the chat, what is something interesting or valuable that you've thought, heard, or said so far?
In the last 30 minutes that we've been together. Just one thing. Airplane analogy.
Yeah. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, we have no problem blackout times. Can you say more about blackout?
That's what we were talking. That was Bud. He's the one who shared about
yes.
the
dinner,
yes,
I see.
Responding.
Yes, a blackout time. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Sloppy boundary is a good way to put it when things merge into each other.
Mhm.
Yes. The airplane sense of time should be everything. So Sonia, imagine if that were the case, and imagine if you were the one in charge of creating that experience for you. That you could hold that inside and manage your time from that context, not in a like dismissive or nothing else is important, but just being really clear inside that like I'm in charge of structuring how I want to, create my time today. Communicating boundaries clearly with all. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, the airplane analogy.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it. So I want to just tell a quick story about a client that I worked with, because I feel like this was extreme people pleasing, extreme not holding boundaries, extreme saying yes. And when I first started working with her, she was on, I think, 10 different boards. She was a mom of 2, or she still is. She is a mom of 2. She also did like some real estate management, and she was pulled so thin that she had chronic migraines all the time. Her health was really suffering. Her relationships were suffering, and she was pretty miserable. And part of it was because she was saying yes to everything. I mean, to be on 10 different boards, you have to have like a people pleasing issue going on inside of yourself, right? And that's not making her wrong. It's just like, she is a very giving, loving, generous person, but to a fault.
The system she was using was not working for her.
Right. So we started working together, and I was like, the first thing we're going to do is we just need to start cutting stuff from your calendar and saying no. And we've worked together for a few years now. And at this point, she's only on 2 different boards. She has hardly any migraines anymore. I mean, she was at like a level like 9 or 10 migraine every single day. She was pretty miserable in her life. She goes on dates with her husband again. She's home. She's blocked. Like her blackout time is from 3 p.m. on when her kids are home, and her life has radically changed. And it still sneaks in where I have to say to her, okay, hold on, you're feeling stressed. Where are you? Like, where did you say yes too much to people? Oh, I said yes that I was going to babysit these people's kids, or that I would help plan this party or whatever, because it's sneaky, right? It gets sneaky. And then all of a sudden we're feeling really overwhelmed again. But that was like this like huge example for me of how much her life changed, but how much it was impacting her and her health and all of her relationships, because she was stuck in people pleasing instead of holding boundaries first and foremost to herself and her family. So what we're going to do right now is Jonny's going to show some examples of different ways to say no. And if you want to screenshot these, I think that would be great.
We can send these also, I think, to Aubrey.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. So what we want to demonstrate is that there are ways to say no and do it in a graceful way, and do it in a way that protects the relationship, that honors the level of responsibilities that you have, and your sort of priority management, etc. So you don't have the time. You could say something like, look, I really hear, and someone's asking for your time. I really hear how important this is. Can we take a look at my current priorities together? Because there's a lot in motion right now, and I want everything to be done right. For example, if your boss like wants to pile something else on your plate or a client or something like that. So I'll either have to press pause on other projects, or we'll need to find someone else to take this on. So number 2, if you're overcommitted, so I have to pass on this one. I've been burning the candle at both ends and promised myself I wouldn't take on more commitment until I had a chance to rest and get my energy back on track. It's honest, real, and holds the boundary. Example number 3, you have a counteroffer. Thanks for thinking of me for X, for, hosting this event at my house or whatever. While I'm not able to do that, I would be able to, etc. I would be able to, support you for a couple hours in planning this party, or whatever the case may be, something that does feel like it would be doable for you.
Or I would be able, thanks for thinking of me, while I'm not able to host this, I would be able to pick up some coffee to bring to the meeting or something like that.
Right. So it's not a total blanket, like, no, sorry, door shut. It's like, no, and.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you might be presented as something you're simply not interested in doing. Thanks for your kind offer. While it's not something I choose to pursue at this time, please know how honored I am to be asked. So just a graceful no. So what we're looking for is like, we're not shutting the door. We're not just like shutting down the relationship or anything like that, but just finding a way to have the no and.
Mm-hmm.
And keeping things open and professional and graceful while also respecting your own boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if any of you have something that you need to say no to or want to say no to, and are unsure of how to do that, you can ask the question if you want when we're done here in a minute. But to really be thinking about right now, what is something that you've said yes to, or that someone's asked of you that you may want to say no to? And an easy way that I do this inside of myself is I say, does it feel heavy or light? So if saying yes to it feels heavy, I'm pretty clear that's a no inside. It's like, okay, so I'm going to be a no to that. But if saying yes feels light and easy, then that's a yes. And so that's a really simple thing of how I check in inside. And if it's a no, it's like, or if it feels heavy and I say yes to it, it's going to likely feel heavy the whole time until whatever it is complete. And that's not worth it to me. So that's another way to just do a quick check-in inside of yourself. And so with this, one of the other big ways that our time management is affected is around our priorities. It's like getting clear, what is our main priority here? Is this reflected on our calendar? Is it reflected on our to-do list? Oftentimes people, and I think someone shared this too, people get tripped up because they make everything a priority, or they make other people's priorities their priorities. Email.
Other people's urgency, their urgency.
Right. Email is a great example of this. The technology thing is a great example of this. It's their priority, but is it my priority? And that's then where the stress and overwhelm comes in.
Just a quick example. I work with a number of leaders who have had the experience where someone will come into their office and it's like 12 hours or 5 hours before something's due. And they had weeks to work on something and they rush into the leader's office and say, I need your help on this. And the leaders are like, wait, but you could have come to me earlier, not 5 hours or 2 hours before it's due. Mm-hmm. And so I've had to work with them to start creating really clear agreements that if you want we're going to create an agreement. If you want my support, or if you want me to review something before it's due, to give me 48 hours before the due date. or something along those lines, so that there's a clear agreement on the table that then can be worked with. And if someone comes rushing in, then it's up to the discretion of the leader to accept it or not. But then you can have a conversation with, hey, we made this agreement, can you share with me what occurred?
Yeah, that's a good example. Another one just around priorities is like email. People prioritize email in a way that likely isn't helpful often, especially if you're working on a project and an email comes in, you're like, oh, I'll just respond to it quick. And then you get pulled out of the project, or you're hanging out with a family or friend and the email comes in, oh, I'll just respond to it really quick. Be careful about how you're prioritizing email over other things, because likely, once again, it's not an emergency in the moment. So part of the prioritizing is to think about, okay, if there's things that are coming up for me, either in work or life, am I planning the time on my calendar? Oftentimes when we're coaching people, when we ask that question, many of them don't even have it planned out on their calendar far enough ahead to create that time and space. So I always tell people, if it's not on your calendar, it's not real. If you're thinking about it in your head, oh, I'll hold the time for this, but then it's not actually blocked time on your calendar, it is very unlikely that it's going to happen. I see people nodding their heads. Yep. Right. So if that is like a takeaway for you from this webinar, and you're thinking, I have something coming up, and you look at your calendar and it's like, wow, nowhere on here do I have time to work on this. That's a big like light bulb, aha, put it on. And then the key is you hold that boundary in the same way you would hold that time with anyone else, and you don't move it. You want to think about too, like, how much time are you taking to plan your day or your week? Or are you just rushing through it? And
reacting to everything as it shows up.
Right. Because part of this is we want to really make sure that we're slowing down. And that's the last piece here, is that we're slowing down to look at our priorities instead of just rushing through. Oftentimes people think like doing it fast is better. Or I'm just gonna shoot from the hip. I'm just gonna like figure it out. I'm going to multitask. I'm gonna, work on doing this. But oftentimes, when we're rushing, it results in a lower quality of work. It results in lower quality of relationships, of leadership, of management. One of the things that I always ask my clients if they're having employee issues is I'm saying, are you sitting down with the person and really slowing down and having a conversation with them? Oh no, there's not enough time. Okay. Well, you may want to schedule some time for longer than 30 minutes where you can really slow down, have a conversation, dig into what's going on, instead of just, having this quick meeting or trying to figure it out over email or text or voice message or something like that. Oftentimes, if we can just slow down and create that time and space, everything can shift.
So
go ahead.
Another way that we like to think about time, and going back to the saying no piece, is that it's important to remember and realize that when you're saying no to something, you're saying yes to something else. So in the act of saying no, you're saying yes at the same time, and vice versa. When I'm saying yes to something, I'm also saying no to a number of other things. So when I say yes, for example, to someone interrupting me and running into my office, I'm saying no to focus time with my project. When I say yes to an urgent, an email that comes in during dinner time with my family, I'm saying no to having quality time and creating quality relationships with my family at the dinner table. And so, recognizing that distinction, I find to be really helpful to when I think about saying no to something, because it's like, oh, wait, this isn't just a no. I'm actually saying yes to things that are really important to me.
Mhm.
I'm actually saying yes to things that I value tremendously. I'm saying yes to relationships that I want to develop. I'm saying yes to, not having stress, and yes to more relaxation, more, less stress in my life, and things like that. When I'm saying yes to exercise, for example, I'm saying no to, the like mental health kind of, struggle and cycle and spinning out that can occur inside my mind when I get really stressed.
So you're gonna help me say yes to exercise more on the weekends?
I absolutely am.
And you'll take both kids? All right, deal. I'm holding you to that boundary.
So it's just a helpful way of thinking about it that I've found to be really helpful.
So here's what we were going to do. We're going to take some time now to teach you a really, really simple tool that's going to help you prioritize some of the workload that you have going on right now. It has a very simple title. It's called Boxes of Four. Kate and Heather, who are here, I've likely taught this to you in the past, but what we're going to do is I'm going to teach you one of my favorite techniques. And this is something that requires us to slow down. It's going to take maybe 5 minutes, but it's going to help you really get clear on prioritizing, and then get really clear on, like, these are the boundaries I have to hold. So right now, make a list of, in no particular order. It doesn't need to be like the most important things, but just do a huge brain dump of everything that you need to do in the next week or two. And this could be, I want to encourage you to keep work and home life separate. So wherever you're feeling most stressed, we don't want to combine the two. So it's like, just do one or the other. Choose wherever you have the most overwhelm right now. And take a few minutes, brain dump, get it all out. You should have, when you're done, like anywhere from like 10 to 20 action items. So we're just going to be quiet for a few minutes and let you do that. All right. So do most of you have a good list of what your of things? Do you have at least 10? We want at least 10 things. If you have your list complete, just go ahead and raise your hand so we can see. And if you need a few more minutes, we can give you time. Okay. Great. All right. Great. So people are finishing up with their lists. So what you're going to do now is, next to your list or below your list, I want you to write out the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. And then look at the list, and I want you to look at it and look at and ask yourself, what is the most important thing that needs to get done right now? Now, this is not the easiest. This is not the funnest. This is likely the thing that actually you've been putting off for a while, typically. But what's the most important thing that needs to get done right now? And then you're going to rewrite that as number 1 and cross it off on your master list. And then you're going to look at the list again. All right, what's the second most important thing that needs to get done? And you're going to put that as number 2 and cross it off on the master list. And then you're going to do that for 3 and 4. Don't go past 3 and 4. So what's the third most important thing that needs to get done and the fourth most important thing that needs to get done, and cross them off your master list. And once that's done, draw a box around your list and title it box 1. Now we're going to do this one more time and I'm going to talk you through how these boxes work. So now underneath box 1, if you can do another 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're going to do the same thing again. So now looking at your list, what's the most important thing that needs to get done? And that's going to go under number 1 on your second list there. And do the same thing for number 2, 3, 4. Once you have that second chunk of 4 done, draw a box around that and label it box 2. Okay. When you have your 2 boxes done, if you can just raise your hand so we can see where you guys are at. Great. Okay. Great. Give you a few more minutes here. All right. So then if you have more things on your to-do list, which you likely do, then I'll let you do that offline, but then you're going to create like a 3rd box, a 4th box, depending on how many things that you have until that list is complete. So, okay, so now what do? We have these boxes. So if you look at box 1 is what you told yourself is the 4 most important things that need to get done. So what this means is you've told yourself these are really important. So you're going to start with the first thing and do it and get it done and not move on to anything else in box 2 or 3 or 4 until box 1 is done. Cross it off. The next one, the next one, the next one, until box 1 is complete. And there's a few things that's really powerful about this really simple tool. One is you're looking at things to do only in chunks of 4. When we have a huge to-do list, it can feel really overwhelming because we're looking at all of these different things that we need to get done. And then oftentimes we leave the day feeling like I didn't accomplish anything. Like, what did I even do today? Like, does anyone ever like have that feeling of like, I feel like I was really busy, but like, did I get anything done? And you can look at the box and be like, actually, I got an entire box done. Like I crossed off a whole box. Some of you may need to break down your boxes if it's like a project, and each, like the project could be pieces of the individual box. So they're like small boxes. So you may need to break it out depending on what's in there. But it also then you're prioritizing what's most important, because the other thing that happens when we're overwhelmed is we look at the things that are like the easiest or like that are going to be the fastest, but they're actually not the most impactful. They're actually not the thing that is going to reduce the overwhelm or stress. Okay, it says, noting that it only took a few minutes to get this list out and organized. Right. So that's part of the slowing down. We need to just slow down. And if you took time each day to just do that, what's the 4 most important things? What's in my box 1 today? It makes a huge difference. And I always tell my clients, don't put anything more than 4 like big things to do on your list each day, because oftentimes it doesn't get done. And if you do get more boxes done, then you feel really good about yourself. But it's like we're just shooting for 1. And it feels so good, you guys, when you cross that box off. So I just encourage you. It really does. It really does. So I encourage you to try it and to see. it's just an experiment. You get to try it on and see how it works for you. But it's a tool that we use often, especially in places of overwhelm, or if you're planning for a big event. When we got married, we did this for our wedding. We had just like tons of brain dumps, and then, would do things in boxes of 4.
Mhm.
So we're going to leave a few minutes for questions. Johnny's going to share about a resource, and then we'll open it up to any questions or comments.
Yeah. So anyone who's interested in, just sort of diving into some of these ideas a little bit more, a colleague and coach of mine has an audio that he sells on his website, for I don't remember what it costs, but over 40 Fortune 500 companies have used this audio and sort of the ideas behind it. And if anybody's interested in that audio, you're welcome to send us an email. I'll put our emails here in the chat and request it.
Well, we'll email it for free.
Yeah,
because you said there's a cost, but we'll email it.
Right.
For free.
It's for sale on his website, but he's given me permission to share it for free to anybody who wants it.
Yeah.
So just email us and we'll.
It's called The Focused Leader.
Right.
It's a great audio.
It is a great audio.
Yeah.
So that's a gift for you guys for coming today.
Yeah, and it goes deeper into what we talked about rushing, about slowing down, about priority management. So it goes deeper into a lot of the topics we spoke about today, people pleasing, things like that.
Yeah.
Are there any questions that
Questions
people
or
have, comments that anyone wants to share?
We only have a few minutes left, so but we do want to hear from you if you have any questions or anything like that.
Well, while we're waiting to see, you said 3 things earlier. What were they again? The rushing and not slowing down, priority management, and holding clear boundaries.
So if there's no questions, then we'd love to hear in closing, in a word or a sentence, what is something that you thought, heard, or said today that was valuable for you? And you can either put it in the chat or take yourself off mute and share with us, off mute. We'd love to hear from you. Just in a word or sentence, what's something that you thought, heard, or said that felt valuable or useful?
Decide whether a yes feels heavy or light. When you're saying no to something, you're choosing to say yes to something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one's huge for me.
The 4 boundary examples. Great.
I've been a big fan of getting away from the Minnesota nice as like just setting boundaries as being rude. And I'm glad to hear that that's happening in more places. It is okay to say it's not the right time and not offend anybody. It is all right. So I'm glad that you mentioned it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. If it isn't on the calendar, it isn't real. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
I have a quick question about the 4 boxes.
Yeah.
Because some of the things that that sometimes you were talking about the little things, like it's easy to go to the little things and do them first because they're quick, but there always are those little things. And I don't know where they fit in the 4 boxes. Like I could almost imagine lumping them together and having one of the lines be, all the 5-minute email responses, or the pick up X, Y, and Z for the office that people are waiting for, like chunking them. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious about that.
Absolutely. You could do that. And if that works for you, I encourage you to do that. I think that sounds great. And like I said, like sometimes, these things need to be broken down into like their own box. So maybe one of the boxes is, I'm just going to hit all these little things. So that's off my plate. So I feel more open and ready to sit down and work on this bigger project because I know that that's all handled. Yeah. Great question.
Okay.
Tad said, I like that saying no is saying yes to something else, that it's a learned skill that needs to be learned repeatedly and easily forgotten. Yep.
Absolutely.
All the time. Like I said, we're constantly practicing these ourselves.
So if you have more questions or anything like that, you're welcome to email us. And we just wanted to say thank you for being here. It was really great to be with you all and hear from you. And thanks for being in this conversation with us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jonny and Elsie. If I will send out those resources you mentioned after this. And thanks everyone for joining us today. That concludes the presentation. Feel free to shoot any questions you have to them over email.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.